Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today is patch day, or at least patch notes day for Path of Exile Delirium 3.10 content update. And holy moly, I have to admit that I have never ever read patch notes. Not in Path of Exile since I'm playing, not in World of Warcraft when I was playing as a hardcore raider back in the days. I was just never interested in patch notes. I always liked the idea of just finding out what's new and what not new. But basically, as a content creator, it's always a good thing to cover all the updates, the patch notes, and give your personal, or at least my opinion about all of that. And holy moly, this is actually a lot to go through. So I initially wanted to just read through and just give you my opinion about each topic, but that video would have been about 2, 3, 4 hours, to be honest, because there is so much text here, holy. So no, I took the time for the past like 3 or 4 hours writing down all the core information into a summarized file here, so you get a better overview on what things are going to get changed, what buffs, what nerfs. So I hope you guys appreciate my work here so we can go through all of these progress quicker. It will still be quite a long video, but still shorter than actually reading through all of the changes on the manual page here. All right, I would say let's start right away with the Delirium Challenge League. This is basically just a rundown on what we're gonna get. As always, 40 new challenges in the league. On 12 challenges completed, you're gonna get the horns. On 24, the cloak, and on 36, the wings. Typical league, last 3 months, and so on. Nothing too fancy over here. So, major new content and features. We have added a new intelligence gems with Arcane Cloak, Stormbind with Rune Blast. Rune Blast is basically the thing that activates the runes on the ground that you cast, basically with Stormbind or something. We have Kinetic Bolt and Spellslinger as intelligence skill gems. Then we have Blade Blast added as dexterity skill gem, and also the Archmage support, which is basically some kind of you spend mana, and the spells you're going to cast are costing way more mana, but they're going to get added damage on top of that. And we're going to get Second Wind, which is basically, as far as I understand, you get an additional cooldown, but also cooldown recovery of certain things. I'm not sure how this one works out. I think it is like if you have Flame Dash has usually 3 stacks. With this one, probably it has 4 stacks, and then also have additional cooldown recovery speed, because later on we're going to see that the recovery speed of Flame Dash has been nerfed. We also get the cluster jewels, the simulacrum, which is basically like any other splinter league where you collect 100 and then you get you convert these 100 splinters into the simulacrum, and this one activating in the map device, you're going to spawn a boss. Then we have 16 new uniques, where I don't really have any information about those. We have spoilered some of those throughout the past couple of days, but not all. 8 new divination cards, no idea, and the delirium orbs that are then get crafted on maps and stuff. So, minor content updates and features. There is fixed balanced specters. So, it has been that there is a lot of specters that are... I hate when there is a writing mistake here, holy shit. That there has been specters that should use a skill, but once you have those specters, they were just melee attacking. So they have adjusted that and fixed the specters, and also rebalanced some of the overtuned specters. And with that, also getting hundreds of new specters, because now you can also get specters out of influenced maps and stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of new specters and abilities, and now they're working properly. So a lot of visual improvements, like the visual improvement of Shock Ground, Burning Ground, and stuff like that. Also various skills, which is like Molten Strike, Frost Blades, and stuff like that. So just visual improvements. Then the stash tab added to the menagerie, thanks to Reddit. We now have the vendor recipe. 3-to-1 means 3 lower sextants can be vendored to one of the higher ones. Then you have randomized portal effect, which got shown into a video of GGG in the past couple of days, which means you can randomize it based every time you open a portal, or if you open a map, you have those 6 portals coming up on the map device, and they can be randomized based on the MTX that you have. Then we have background frame rate options, which basically means if you are alt-tabbing to the desktop or on the other screen or whatnot, you can basically fix your FPS to get like, let's say you run like 100 FPS, or let's be honest, let's say 60 FPS in-game, and once you go to desktop, you can manage to do it on 10 FPS if it's background, basically, if it's not the focus. Then no more ambushes while looking at betrayal, leaderboard, or incursion or stuff like that, which is really great. So I hope it is like I think it is. Once you have those the synthesize the betrayal leaderboard, basically, where you see the Katarina, oops, spoiler, the mastermind on top, that you cannot just die while there is just monsters basically spawning while you're reading through, because this is one of the most reasons why I die, which probably even makes me to play hardcore sometimes, because this is actually one of a lot of reasons when I die, that I just die on something while I was reading something. Anyways, unique art added to Breachstone upgrades means that the Exhaust Breachstone will have a different layout or art, basically image, than a pure Exhaust Breachstone, for example. And there has been various CPU and audio performance upgrades, which hopefully includes this one. I mean, the thing is, once you have a shit ton of monsters there and you have a lot of skills and stuff, these audios are just overlapping each other into like a lot of crackling noise and stuff. It's really weird, so I hope this one actually fixes that. Let's talk about the Atlas changes. So we now have a Conqueror progression spawn on the Atlas. So if you open your Atlas, your map, basically your Atlas, on the left side where we used to have the watchstones, there should now be a Conqueror progression, so you see when it's going to happen. And we also have an increased spawn rate from to 50% up from 33%. They also added a tutorial. If this basically for players or casuals that are having still a rough time, if they are like on 16 watchstones, what should they do next, right? And they added some kind of tutorial where it should help you with your next step, what you should do next. Then the awakening level, this is an interesting part, is now not based on the, you have 8 sections on your Atlas device, and every time you had 4 watchstones in a section, you raised the awaken level by 1, right? And now it is basically the total amount of watchstones that you have in your Atlas, no matter the region, and then divided by 4. Means if I have 1 stone in each region is a total of 8, and then divided by 4 would be awakener level 2, although none of my sections are actually fully watchstoned, basically, right? So, next thing, if you're spawning a Conqueror and you're actually dying on it, you will not have any more influenced monsters or drops until you actually defeat the Conqueror you failed on, right? So this is actually good because, questionable good, because there is target farming, right? So people were actually spawning Conquerors without killing the Conquerors and just keep on mapping in this region to just have these monsters spawned, right, for the influenced items and stuff. What I read out of that is basically if you attempt the Conqueror and then fail, I don't know if this is the same as if you never attempted it, because you have to kill, or at least to start the map, once you talk to Sana, and she will open the portal where then at the end boss of this map will now be the Conqueror, right? So I think it's combined, basically. As soon as Sana will have the Conqueror available, then probably it stops having influenced monsters. Would be a great idea to just finally fix that target farming of certain influenced items. Now, the Awakening bonus will grant increased chance of Atlas missions and increased map effects. That means basically, you had the Atlas objectives, the first number basically, when you were completing maps with the bonus that you had higher tier map drops, basically, right? The same counted for the Awakening bonus here. This is once you had the Awakening level, you had to do certain maps or all maps again with the requirements. Means, let's say Burial Chamber is tier 7. If you want to complete, this is a rare map. That means if you alch them, or defeat the boss on rare map, you unchecked or checked the bonus here, right? So you get +1 to the actual bonus. If you then says the Awakening bonus says like complete Burial Chambers on tier 14, Awakening level 7, this is the Awakener bonus, right? And this actually gave you increased drop rates as well, but now they changed that to actually grant you increased chance of getting an Atlas mission once you defeat the end boss, and also the map effect, which is both good and bad, because map effects do count in the quantity of maps, for example, or the monster pack size and stuff, which is really good, but also affects all the negative things. For example, monster gain fizzes extra fire damage to 100%, so it will also affect this kind of stuff. So the Awakening bonus objectives will also make this one harder, but overall, really great change. Then they're gonna buff Cyrus. So in phase 3, when he's basically getting bigger and makes his quad beam and stuff, we have some changes. He heals up to 75% instead of 50% once the phase begins. Then once he makes the quad beam, you know, the circular quad beam, if you run into that, you're gonna get a debuff where you get increased damage. The piercing corridors will now not be affected. You know, I did my challenge, for example, being in the corridor, spawning totems, and these missiles that he fires will always hit my totems and disappear. Now it will go through. It will only not pierce the player, but everything else they will pierce. So it's going to be harder to just, if you're in the tunnel, you're gonna have a hard time. And also the apparition, that is basically, I think it is, you know, you have Cyrus in the start, and there is this bigger Cyrus on top of him that is shooting like meteors from the air and stuff. This will be more active, so this thing will do more damage, or at least like more frequently damage. So it's going to be harder to reach the last phase, which is nice. So, slight sextant nerfs on overtuned mods like unidentified maps, barrels, and monster pack size. So these are some slight nerfs, means if the monster pack size would give you like 8 extra packs, then now it gives you like 7 or 6 extra packs. So overall, there are some sextant modifiers that are just better than others, and they kind of change the overtuned or nerf them to be same equal with the other map modifiers, which is something nice. I mean, a little bit less monsters, which is always bad, but in the end, if it helps the general balancing, then I'm super happy with this. So, next one, Metamorph mechanics added to the core game. We have now a 10% chance to spawn the Metamorph packs in a map. This will then, if you talk to Tane in the Metamorph map, basically, you're gonna unlock him to your hideout, same as the Cassia encounter, which is good and bad, because for my main character, for example, as soon as I find Cassia in the map, I can then talk to her and get her in my hideout and then start anointing items, right? What I don't like is when I level up a new character, I have to find her again and again and again and again and again. You know, it's just shit. If you level up a new character and you want to anoint something, you basically have to put the items in your stash, relog to the character that has Cassia in her hideout because you found her with the other character, then anoint. So it would be better if it's basically you find her once and you unlock it for the rest of the league for other characters from that league. That would be better, but yeah, we're gonna live with that. Then we have added Metamorph sextant modifiers and itemized organs not influenced by maximum power effect. Remember when you spawn a Metamorph, you put in the items, and then there was this green bar filling up. And once it was full, it was dropping this certain item-specific organ, right? This is not influenced by it anymore. I think it's probably going to be like that. The harder you're gonna make it, the higher the chance, and once the bar is filled up, then it's 100% chance, something like that. There will be a text on the right bar where it says by your loot that it will drop the organ once you start filling in the stuff in the vial. Good. Endgame vial site areas have a lot of improvements, a lot of buffs. They now count as maps, including map-specific drops. They also get 4 to 6 random rare modifiers, like a rare map, you know, with random prefix and suffixes. They entirely removed Alley and Fizz Reflect from the site areas, what is really good. And why did I write a German word here? From. All right, now fixed. So they have increased monster variety and density, and also the bosses in the side areas, the unique bosses, will have buffed life pools as well, so they are comparable to regular unique bosses. Then character balance, we have reductions to reflect the damage sextants, mods, or Pantheon, now also affects the minions. The wand projectiles are now bigger. That means if you hit with a wand attack, the projectile will be kind of bigger, so it on impact basically. It might not be a visual effect, but it's just like, let's say you need to hit exactly that pixel to hit the monster. Now it's basically 10 pixels, so it's easier to aim at the monster and actually hit it, which is kind of good, to be honest, because it will be a quality of life when hitting monsters. Then they nerfed Elusive. This is the movement speed buff from 40 to 30%, the base movement speed. They also nerfed the dodge from 20 to 15 and the spell dodge from 20 to 15. But they also buffed Scorch and Brittle effect. Scorch is the same kind of Ignite, just the other fire type of ailment, which lowers the resistance of the enemy based on the impact hit of your fire damage, right? Up to 30% minus fire resist on the enemy based on the hit from 20. And also the Brittle buff, this is the cold damage as far as I know. This will give you 10% increased base crit. It is now 15% base crit. So they buffed the secondary ailments here, which is super nice if you don't focus on Ignite, and minus 30% resistance of the enemy is essentially like a 30% more damage for your skills. All right, let's talk about the skill reworks. This is not the skill balance, or at least the specific skill balance. There is only one rework, and this is the animate weapon. It now has a physical gem tag. It's now supported by Unleash and Spell Echo. In total, there is less animate weapons that you have access to, but each of those will have more attack speed and more damage and a little bit less movement speed. The reason for that is there has been a multiplier that has not been working. You know, there's an actual talent or thing that was just not working at all, same as like the majority of Volson's kill tree, shots fired. But now this is working, and this is one of the reasons why this has to get a rework, because with like 40 available animate weapons or something, it was just too insane. Good. So, skill balance, totems and ballisters do have approximately 50% more life, and the ancestral decoy, ancestral totem, decoy, and holy flames totem do have a slight buff in terms of their life, because they already had more life than the totems, the other totems, and the ballisters. So all of these totems should now have the same amount of life. Let's talk about the specific skills. We have Ancestral Protector has now a visual upgrade. Arctic Breath has more projectile speed, lower damage, but lower mana cost as well. I'm not sure about that, because I think Arctic Breath is actually a cold dot skill, so it doesn't really matter if it has lower impact damage, same comparable to Essence Drain, as far as I understand it, right? Never played Arctic Breath, please don't judge me. Artillery Ballister has now added base damage and the buff damage effectiveness, so it will do a lot more damage. Then Blade Vortex has now access to Blade Blast. The Blade Fall and the Ethereal Knives can now be like the blades that are spawned on the floor. They last like 6 seconds, and they can be used for animate Guardian, animate weapon. Sorry, my bad. They can be used by animate weapon, and also now have the Blade Blast effect usable on these two skills as well, same as the Blade Vortex. Then Dash has an increased travel distance. I personally am not a fan. I don't know why all of these new when did they got released, like 3.7 or something, with the Frostblink, Dash, and so on. For me personally, the two only good movement skills are Flame Dash and Leap Slam. Yeah, Dash has now increased travel distance. I'll probably not still use it. So, Explosive Arrow has completely been changed. It now has an arrow limit of 20, while it adds +2 explore range per arrow that is sticking on the target, and 3% more damage, which is essentially 60% more damage for hits and ailments on the target based on, as I said, sticking arrows on the target. Then Flame Dash has less cooldown recovery speed in total, which I then said with the Wind something support gem that we probably get 1 extra stack and less cooldown recovery speed from the support gem, so not too mandatory. Then Flame Blast has a radius nerf, but it has a per stage buff. This is something weird, because Flame Blast should be actually bigger on the initial cast, so it would be actually relevant, because I tried Flame Blast once, it was actually garbage, it was slow as hell, and now they basically nerfed the radius of the circle on the impact hit. That's why I wrote down killing a dead skill. I mean, Flame Blast was far from any meta or something like that, and now it's kind of nerfed in the radius as well, which is doesn't really make sense to me. Good, Frostblink deals now damage. I don't even know if it deals damage before as well. I never used it. But it also leaves Chilled Ground, which reduces the movement speed of the monsters and has increased travel distance. Herald of Agony received a slight nerf damage per virulence, but being like Agony Crawler builds are very strong. So I think they have like an early nerf from like 6% to 5% early on, and later on it's like 9% instead of 12%. But based on the Herald of Agony rings and now the new keystones from the cluster jewels, I think Herald of Agony builds are in a very, very good spot still. Lightning Warp has a reduced duration, which is pretty good, because the longer the duration, the longer you're gonna travel. So the reduced duration will actually help you to travel faster, which is super nice. There is a precision nerf, means they usually give you 40% increased critical strike chance and accuracy. Accuracy used for melees, obviously, but casters also take advantage of the level 1 precision, just because it costs almost no mana to reserve, same as clarity and stuff. But they nerfed the crit value from 40% to 20% on level 1. Level 20 is kind of the same, I think 58 to 59%. So on a max level, a precision, there will be no effects, but the level 1 nerf is pretty mandatory for caster builds. Cost 20% is not really a lot. I mean, probably if you have the mana open, why not still use it? 20% is 20%. Good, there has been a Pyroclast Mine nerf here. There is a little bit of a cast buff, but a +1 projectile per 4 sequence detonations, up from 2. So that's like big nerf, I would say. Ray Spectre has now a nerf from the base level of the Summoned Spectres. They were on level 20 gem, they were level 80, the monster level, now they are 76. As a non-minion player, I have no idea how big this effect will be. I assume they're gonna have a little bit less life and a little bit less damage, but cannot really give an opinion about that. Race zombies now have 6 zombies instead of 7 on level 20, so you're gonna have 1 less zombie on the max level. And you also, they also, like, when you stand still, these zombies were always like running around. I call it this zombie dance party, but now they removed that. So once you stand still in your hideout, for example, the zombies should not run around like on drugs. Shield charge has now a double the radius on impact. Okay, nice. Shrapnel Ballister got now an added base damage and buffed damage effectiveness, so both double buff in this case, cause they added the base damage and also higher the effectiveness of the support gems, which is super nice. Spirit Offering gives no extra energy shield for minions, but it now buffs chaos resistance of minions. So monsters do have a lot of life. I remember, like, I think like 60 or 70,000 life on zombies, and then they get like a portion as extra energy shield, which is kind of ridiculous. But I'm not entirely sure if this is actually mandatory. It could be a big thing for summoner players, like, holy shit, my minions start to die, or it's not going to be any kind of relevant at all. I cannot say anything about that. Then the Summon Carrying Golem got a damage nerf. The Summon Holy Relics have a slight nerf to the Nova frequency. Then Summon Skeletons have a 40% damage nerf to the skeletons, but not for the mages or the Vile versions. And the max skeletons is now 7 instead of 8 on gem level 20. Temporal Chains, this is important for the Self-Cursed Temp Chain Headhunter builds, have less effect on players. That means a curse had less, or at least effect. I mean, if you have self-cursed temp chains, your debuffs will expire slower. With this one, they will now expire faster from the slower, okay? So it's basically the buffs will not last as long, and this is multiplicative, this kind of word, with all the other things that have effect of curses, right? So there's a slight nerf. I don't think it will have any effect, because if your Headhunter buffs last 60 seconds or 53 in the end, I'm not sure if this will help anything. And the Volatile Death has now a 60 orbs limit. I think that was in the previous patch notes before, but they mentioned this one again, probably in the tooltip or something. So, Vile skills balance. Vile Flame Blast now triggers every 3 stages instead of every 5 stages, and now has a buffed radius, which is kind of nice. But there is another topic that is kind of ruining the fun, but we're going to talk about this one later, so yeah. This is the only Vile skill change balance here. Support gem balance, we have Ballister Totem support, has a damage buff, because, you know, with these supports here, same as like greater multiple projectiles and stuff like that, they're gonna give you less damage. But the higher the level of the skill gem, or the support gem, the less damage they give you, okay? So let's say on level 1, the GMP gives you 20% less projectile damage, but on level 20, it gives you 10% less. So basically, the higher the level of the support gem, the more damage you're gonna do in total. And the Ballista Totem got this buff. They also have this buff on Unleash and also Awakened. So they're gonna give you less damage. And the Feeding Frenzy support got a buff here. It was about 25% when monsters hit. Now it has 25% base on level 1, and the higher the level of the support gem, the higher the chance of getting the buff. Or at least the Feeding Frenzy thing. Good. Passive tree balance. They buffed the energy shield nodes on the witch starting area. They also changed the wand cluster to have spell damage, conversion to attack damage, same as the Crown of Ice effect. Then the stave nodes got a damage buff and attack speed buff. The explosive impact on the template area got buffed in values, and the arcane expense cluster got moved to the north of arcane vision. Ascendancy balance, we have the necromancer changes. The bone barrier will now not give you resistance per minions, and the life ES recovery is now capped on 20% instead of 30%. The Commander of Darkness now grants 30% elemental resistance, up from 20%. So this is a buff here, this is a nerf. Then on the Assassin, we have more damage on the Opportunistic. This is, I think, the when there's only one target nearby. The Ambushes and Assassinate got a damage buff against low life, about 5% more damage. But the Mistwalker got nerfed from 15% increased attack and cast speed down from 20%. And the Guardian, the Radiant Faith, where you get energy shield based on your reserved mana, has been nerfed as well. So instead of 15% of your reserved mana value as extra energy shield, you're going to get 10% of those. Good. Item balance. We now have Fizz damage taking as Chaos, Fire, Cold, and Lightning, mutually exclusive. This is something I have a hard time understanding. It means like I have a hard time understanding the wording of that, right? I just think it means that if you have like an Assassin's Mark on hit, you cannot take any kind of other because they all share the same curse on hit thing. So I think it does that, but I'm not entirely sure. Somebody that is a native English speaking person will have an easier time understanding that. But I think you cannot get the same amount, or at least like multiple times the same kind of stat on one item. Then they have a nice buff on bows. There has been a new affix here. You know, I think on a Shaper bow it was, where you can get one additional arrow, you can now get 2 additional arrows. This is the higher tier of the additional arrow, and then the +1 that we had to, or what we had in the past, is now a lower tier and therefore more common. Then the Enduring Mana Flask will no longer be queued. So if you had like multiple sources of mana gain, you press both flasks. First was the stronger one, and once this was gone, the timer of the flask expired, then the other one was queued. Now it is like both are running at the same time, but you're gonna get the stronger effect. But if the first flask lasts 3 seconds and the second 5 seconds, it was 8 seconds in total because it got queued up. And now it's basically, if your first is 3 seconds, the second is 5 seconds, then you will have 3 seconds as strong, and then an additional 2 seconds for the lower one, and that's about it. So then they had a lot of temple, God, my writings here. They have a lot of temple modifier changes from cities to temple towns. There's like a lot of, like every single mod here on the temple modifiers has gotten a slight nerf on that. Then the +2 Pyroclast Mine Enchant is gone. That means you can only get the +1 Pyroclast Mine Enchant, but only in Uberlab. So, crafted modifiers, the +1 Zombie Skeleton Unveil / craft is now only available on the helm, not anymore on the body armor or amulets and stuff like that. Then influenced item modifiers, new mods on Hunter and Warlord gloves, so we have a bigger item pool or mod pool basically on these. The max resistance rolls are now available on boots, gloves, helmets, and shields, and on Quiver only the second tier of these ones. Shaper helmets can now gain nearby enemies take increased elemental damage, which is insane because this is a more damage basically. Then they remove the increased energy shield from the Shaper belts. Hunter influenced amulets can have access to chaos damage leached as life. This is something I very, very welcome because it's so hard as a chaos-based build like Essence Drain, Bane, and stuff like that to actually gain access to that. The only thing that I'm not sure here is I don't really think that this counts for damage over time. I think it counts only for impact hits, right? Like Dark Pact, for example, because life leech is actually only affected by an hit that you're doing, right? And when you have a damage over time, you only hit, for example, Essence Drain with this minor little projectile that is hitting. From that you leech, but not from the actual big damage you're doing. Fossil crafting is something very interesting. Fossil exclusive mods added to influenced item pool, and Facetted Bloodstained Hollow Fossil remain fossil exclusive. So what they're gonna do is a lot of the best items in the game are fossil crafted modifiers, or at least items, right? What they want to do is removing all of these, not removing, you will still have access to that, but let's say what would be a good thing to, for example, the 100% or 60% chance for the poison to deal 100% more damage, for example. This is a fossil crafting exclusive, but now this stat will also be available on the Elder modifier or Elder influenced item. So basically only those are the remaining that are fossil exclusive. So every other mod that you could only get with fossil crafted will now get added to the typical influenced items, right? And it's kind of good and bad. Good is you can just start crafting in a typical way other than fossil crafting. On the other hand, you're just gonna have way more modifiers on the total item pool, so getting a mirror tier item will be even harder, because the more mods, the harder it is to hit this exactly mod that you want to have. Good. Item or unique item balance. We have the unique watchstone drops. Now has a certain amount of uses multiplied by 3. That means there will only be a watchstone can only have like 12, 15, 18 uses based basically on the sextant, so it will run out of uses with the sextants basically, because sextants also last for 3. So Savior now works with consume charge skills like Flicker Strike, so based on how many frenzy stacks these reflections have, the more often they can use Flicker Strike until the frenzy stacks are gone. Singularity has an aura radius buff. Surface Heart has now a Soul Eater duration of 20 seconds up from 10, so there's a big buff. And the Solstice Vigil has a nerf based on the buff expiration speed. So Solstice Vigil is also something that is kind of making your buffs last longer. You use that in combination with like the Self-Cursed Temp Chains Headhunter build, for example, the Blade Vortex and other builds where you basically want to increase the duration of the buffs that you have, like Flasks and stuff like that. So they're going to expire a little bit faster now. So then the Tempered Jewels, you have Tempered Flesh, Spirit, and Mind from the Temple. They have some reworks here. The red one, the Flesh, will give you increased life recovery rate. Then the green one is movement speed and the other mana recovery rate. And the Transcendent version of those will give you the usual stats, like I think the blue one gives you accuracy, the red one gives you multiplier per unallocated strength. And basically you're also going to get reduced, like, how to explain that? 2% increased life recovery rate per allocated, but if you have the Transcendent, you're going to get -% life recovery rate per unallocated. So it's a little bit weird, but there is some changes here based on those stats here, but nothing too hyper fancy, to be honest. Then the Grand Spectrum jewels got changed. These are the jewels where you can stack up. The more you have of these jewels, the more everything will give you. The Cobalt one did give you mana per Grand Spectrum. Now it gives you critical strike chance. The Viridian, the green one, gives you now increased elemental damage, which is basically a buff from the old version. And the Crimson one gives you now gives you all resistance instead of the armor rating, which is super nice, because yeah, on some builds it's actually super hard to get a lot of all resistance. If you can stack those, you can really get a lot of all resistance for sacrificing jewels, which is, you know, jewels are meant for doing damage. Thank you, Duffy. Good. Then we have the Fevered Mind has increased mana cost of skills, reduced from 100% increased to 50. We also get a spell damage buff. We have Fate of the Val has a damage buff. Shadow Stitch got increased defenses. The Aunt's Heritage has a max resistance nerf. Shaper's Touch has value nerfs. So that's good because of all the strength stacking builds. It got like hilariously amounts of energy shield. The Crown of Ice, the damage buff where the spell damage values got added to the attack-based things, like a conversion, got buffed now from 100 to 150. So if you have like 100% increased spell damage, would be the same to like 150% increased projectile attack damage, basically. Chains of Command have updated values or updated item itself based on the animate weapon rework, same as the Chorehead's Black Steel. The Baron is a big nerf here for summoners. The +1 zombie per 300 strength has been nerfed to 500 strength per zombie. The Death's Harp has a multiplier nerf from 100 to 50. Obliterations have a physical damage buff, basically. Probably, I'm not even sure where you want to use that, because it's not like yeah, it would be probably for the one skills, but I think obliterations have another purpose. Eclipse Solaris has no more added physical, but now it gives you fire damage and attack speed. Doriani's Fist has now increased effect of shock and more energy shield, plus the energy shield on kill buff. Then Soul Catcher. This ladies and gentlemen, is a very, very sad thing. I'm gonna write this bold here. Soul Catcher no longer grants reduced cost of Val skills, so that basically means rip to all these 5 stacks Val skills, which is super sad. Rip the Val arc, rip all of that stuff, which is... Yeah, at some point we're gonna test one of the Val skills based on the rework, but I think it will kill all my Val builds, which is, yeah, shit, to be honest. And the Soul Ripper, the more expensive version, the upgraded version of the Soul Catcher, has been reworked, granting Val souls based on consumed charges. But if... What? I don't know what to say about this one. Holy shit, why? Why? There is such a few people are actually using Val skills because it's so fun to build around, and then they completely remove that with no longer grants reduced Val skills, so... Really... Other item changes are not really relevant. Monster changes, the rest of spinning blades will now get an animation before dealing damage. The rest not really mandatory. Delve changes, delve area now based on the monster level, not downscaling you anymore. Not possible to enter delve areas if you are 20 levels or more lower than the delve point. No longer able to join delve encounters that are in progress, and more monsters in delve cities. Incursion changes are a lot, and there is too much to actually go through, but the chance you have now a chance to get double corrupted strings of servitudes from the end boss in areas or temples 80+. There is a lot of rooms that give you temple-wide bonuses like monster density and stuff. More architect rare drops after completing the incursions. This is basically when you're mapping the incursions, where you do like 3 every single map. Basically a theory buff in the temple, so they get adjusted to the life pool. But basically you can say they just buff the shit out of the temple, giving you more items, more drops, better temples, better rooms, more rewards, and everything. So it's definitely worth checking the incursions and the temple. And also the drops from the incursions are now based on the tier. So the higher the tier you find it in a map, as far as I understand it, the better the reward. So if you have like a corruption chamber tier 1 in your map, then you're gonna have less rewards as if you would upgrade 2 to 3, or if you're running a tier 3 corruption chamber in the map. So you're gonna get more loot based on the tier it already is, or where you upgraded to. Betrayal changes added Metamorph Scarabs to the Mastermind. Aisling will now award Metamorph Scarabs to Intervention. In Intervention, double veiled weapons and jewelry in Transportation, and armor and jewelry in Fortification. Then we have map changes. The Asiri clones in the Alluring Abyss, I think the Alluring Abyss was the Uber Asiri, does have about 5 times more life, which is kind of nice. This is a long time they should have done that, because you now like just one-shot every single clone. Now they have 5 times more life, which will probably be a little bit harder now to one-shot these clones here. Then almost every single unique map boss have now changed life values to be buffed, so they're going to be harder now. Then maps offered by Sana will now inner hit the awakening level of the map Sana is standing in, and Sana's level is now based on the number of bonus objectives you have completed, rather than just the number of maps completed on your atlas. The Burial Chamber is now tier 7, which is nice, because now there is like 2 tier 7 naturally. Probably it's even easier now for the Orb of Horizons to actually get those. Then you have nerfs to monster avoid elemental ailments, and nerfs to monster avoid poison, bleed, and blinding, which is super nice, because at some awakening bonus, if the map roll was like 90% chance to avoid, they were 100% immune, because of they had a value then buffed, and it was more than 100%, so they were completely immune to all kinds of ailments. Elemental ailments, that is. So that's very welcomed. And the Shaper gets now like a damage reduction. So basically, once the Shaper gets active in a phase, he will have the first 8 seconds, like he will start with a big damage reduction, and this will fade off basically the longer the phase goes, and after 8 seconds it should be completely gone. So that would probably be no more one-shots, or you just need a lot more damage to get these one-shots going. Challenge accepted. Sana League mods available during 3.10. Basically, we now have Blight for 8 Chaos, but we lose the Nemesis, but we still have Beyond, and I like Beyond more than Nemesis. That basically means Headhunters will probably be more expensive this league, just because you cannot Ancient Orb them, you cannot chance them, and so on. User interface improvements, we have able to search watchstones with sextants on the Atlas search bar, and certain skills will repeat while holding down on left click and stuff. Not sure about how this is going to be, but there are certain skills when you have them on your bar and you just press this button that they will continuously spawn. The list on that is on the patch notes if you want to check this one. Link is given in the description below. Quest rewards, they added the new skills on the quest rewards based on the character. This is basically for blast rain and stuff like that. No relevant PvP changes as far as I see. Bug fixes, the list is insanely long, but just quality of life and bug fixes in total, no big changes here. And language changes were not any big things either. Alright guys, this is it. This is the 3.10 content update, the patch notes. A lot of good things, a lot of great things to be honest. I really hate the part with the soul catcher. I'm not sure how I should feel about that because there is a lot of builds that I really enjoy, and that would kill every kind of Val build, especially my favorite, the Val Archer for the Legion farming and stuff like that. Not sure about that. The good thing though is my League starter survived. There has been no changes to Viper Strike, to Pestilence Strike, to all of that kind of things. No poison changes at all, so no bleed changes, no core things here. There has been changes to summoners that was kind of obvious, to be honest. There is a lot of buffs to like ballistas and stuff. So all in all, I'm looking forward to the next League. Pre-reading patch notes and now after reading patch notes, there's a lot of quality of life changes, but I was expecting them to happen anyways at some point, so yeah, guys, let me know in the comments below what you think about the changes to the Atlas, the changes to Path of Exile in general. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this kind of video. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.